I want to hear directly from voters about the choices they made in the election. CNN's Danny Freeman has been talking to people in battleground Pennsylvania.
It was just a great feeling. I still have goosebumps.
It was like Christmas came early for Bernie Schiffler at Park Hill Jewelry in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
Look at that shine.
The Republican small business owner, sporting Trump shoes and a custom Trump ring he made himself, said he feels like finally the country is back on the right track. What did it mean to you to vote for him a third time?
It was just great. I thought, he did so well in 2016. I just wanted to see him do this again.
In the small red borough in the larger red Lancaster County, supporters of former President Trump echoed what his fans elsewhere felt around the country. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling relieved that America came together and saved our democracy.
Gabby James says she's a Republican, but she's also pro-choice.
I know the main concern here is women's rights, but strong women are going to always rally together and fight for our rights, and we need to vote and come together to make the right decision in the states. Unfortunately, it has come to that, but that was not my deciding factor in voting for Donald Trump.
Are you concerned that President-elect Trump will be hostile to women's rights at all?
No. I think as a nation, women are going to come together and prove ourselves.
In nearby Lancaster, a bluer city in the red county, Democrat Sarah Thomas said she couldn't believe in the end it really wasn't close. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm pretty disappointed. I'm just sad. I'm worried. I just woke up feeling kind of disgusted and ashamed, honestly.
The mother, who works with children, said for her this was about reproductive rights and about rhetoric.
I want to raise my son to be someone who believes that men and women have equal dignity and autonomy over their bodies. I do not believe in the, frankly, xenophobic and racist hate that's been spewed.
Democrat Greg Colton was still at a loss for words.
I had really hoped that we would have something other than a caricature of a president for the next 4 years.
The Pennsylvanian worried the discourse in American politics will only get worse.
I wanted to put someone in office who would embody the ideals and the integrity of the American people, and I don't think we have that now.
With the voters having delivered their judgment, now the focus turns to what happens next under a new president.
I'm hoping for secure borders. I'm hoping for economic change. I'm hoping that enough women come out and demonstrate the need for women's rights and hope for a better place that we have been in for the past 4 years.
Now, Anderson, here in Lancaster County, Democrats told me that they were really hoping to close the margins in this traditionally red county. That was something that we were looking at yesterday as polls were closing. Governor Shapiro got about 48% of the vote here back in 2022, but in the end, Vice President Harris actually paced with President Biden back in 2020, only getting about 41% of the vote. Trump, though, improved his margins here, and that was, of course, the story of many, many places across the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Anderson?
Danny Freeman, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Back with the team here in New York. Let's talk about the Democratic Party and what needs to happen, what needs to be looked at and analyzed.
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of important discussions were going on there earlier, and I guess I call myself a dingle Democrat at this moment. And I started talking about this last night. I think this wasn't just a problem in this election. This has been a growing problem over time. This disaffection among working class voters with the Democratic Party and the kind of growth of the Democratic Party as a college-educated metropolitan party that approaches working class voters in a kind of missionary way, saying, we're going to help you become more like us, and kind of disdains, not intentionally, but sends these signals that really bespeak a lack of respect. And I think the party in some ways has lost its ability to talk to working class voters. And you can see it, and it's not just white working class voters, it's black working class voters, it's Hispanic working class voters, and the party paid a price. Now, I think Kamala Harris articulated she spoke to some of the concerns of folks, but you can't develop those relationships in 90 days. The second conversation that happened had to do with Biden, and I just want to point out that
Yeah, there was a quote in earlier from an unnamed person, longtime aide to President Biden, saying twice our party leaders in 2016, 2024 pushed aside Biden for someone who would generate more enthusiasm. Twice we lost. Biden remains the only candidate who's beaten Trump, and he was tossed over once again.
Look, so in the exit polls...
Signed Joe Biden.
In the exit polls yesterday, Joe Biden had a 40% favorable approval rating. Nobody would get reelected with that number, but more importantly, Kamala Harris, among the 59 who disapproved of him, she lost 82 to 16. The whole campaign that was run against her linked her to Joe Biden. And the reason that people had concerns about Biden weren't so much this, but I mean, I raised concerns a year and a half ago and had nothing to do with Barack Obama. It had everything to do with age. I said then my concern wasn't political; it was actuarial. Yeah. And how do you tell people that you should elect someone who's going to be closer
It is
to 90
remarkable,
than
and
80?
at some point, I don't know if there will be a reckoning or some sort of. But
I have a lot to say.
Yeah, okay, Van, go ahead.
I mean, I wasn't trying to cut you off.
No, please go ahead.
No, I mean, big picture, in 2016, these two parties had flaws, and they were about hypocrisy. You had the Republican Party, which is the party of Lincoln, the party of radical individual liberty, that had somehow smuggled in a bunch of white nationalists. And you're like, hold on a second, that doesn't make sense. Is that going to blow up the Republican Party? At the same time, you have the Democratic Party, the party of FDR and working class people, that has smuggled in all this elitism, where if you weren't eating kale, you weren't allowed in the door. And I said, hold on a second, that's not going to work. I actually wrote a book about this. Like, both of these parties had fundamental hypocrisies. And the question was the racism in the party of Lincoln going to blow up that party, or was the elitism in the party of FDR going to blow up our party? Well, guess what? Our party just blew up. It blew up because of the elitism. But it's not just the elitism that's obvious. The condescension, the smarty pants stuff, the changing, what you got to call people every 6 months. Somebody called me a BIPOC. What is it? I've never gone to a BIPOC church or had a BIPOC food. I mean, they just make up stuff.
I don't even know what that means.
That's what I'm saying. Like they literally make up stuff every 6 months to make sure that you feel like an idiot. But that's not the worst of it. It's much more insidious. We thought, in Philadelphia, we're doing door knocking, people going around. There's no ground game for Trump. We're laughing at Trump. Like, there's no ground game. There's nobody walking around with literature. Nobody's knocking on doors. Didn't have to, because they were on this thing. They were.
What is that?
This turns out to be a smartphone that makes you dumber the more you look at it. But it turns out that the working class is getting its information completely differently on channels that we don't know anything about, on streaming platforms that we're not at, on gaming services. Right. And the Trump campaign was putting information, ads. We woke up in a body bag and didn't know it, because we thought we did something on 60 Minutes and here on CNN, it turns out that the elitism had gotten so bad that we didn't even understand where the working class was. And that is much deeper a problem than I think we recognize.
Let me eat my crow before I let David Urban speak. So I always thought Trump could win. I did not think he would win by these margins. And I misread the room on a number of things. I always kind of focused on suburban women. And what I think the Democrats so heavily focused on was abortion, abortion, abortion. This is going to be the animating issue. It was in the 2022 midterms. It turns out that it sounds like a lot of these states are kind of okay with what Trump said, which is let the states deal with it, including the fact that most of the battlegrounds, other than Georgia, was the only one that had a particularly restrictive law. People separated the vote. They were able to separate the candidate from the issue. That didn't end up being the focus. Something that I did hear from, and I think could have been motivating, is these protests on college campuses. Women in the suburbs are horrified when they see Jewish kids getting bullied and getting intimidated by these protesters, who are then defended by elitist academics who are supposed to be the people rearing them up and looking out for them. That scares people. That feels like a shift that goes so far out of the mainstream of where the country wants to be. And I think that's one of the areas that the room was just misread by Democrats.
Well, 2 quick points, and not to pile on the Democrats, but I will. An issue that Axe has talked about before. Joe Biden didn't get out of this race because he said Kamala Harris can't win. I'm the only one that can win. So, there's a little bit of this, built-in delay in getting out, because The only possible alternative, Kamala Harris can't win. So she was, not to put her, in a good light, but she was kind of starting out in a bad spot to begin with because the premise was you're not going to win. And then the second point is a little bit more kind of on the ground. Van's talking about knocking doors. There's an article in the local Philly news about the Democratic chairman, Bob Brady, of the party, Democratic Party. And Bob says, I'd like to see the Harris campaign, especially the national campaign, coordinate with us a bit on the ground. Talk to us. Give us some resources. Show us some respect. That didn't happen. They were just elitists. They went out there. They did their own thing. They didn't include the Democratic City Committee or ward leaders. They just didn't do it at all.
Can I just make one point? Can bring about needed change from the exit poll. 28% of people, this is the most important thing. Trump won that 74-24. And this has to do with a lot of this.